Absolutely.
Rory, how are you?
Jackson, how are you?
Doing well.
Jake, how are you?
Good, very good.
Everybody else, how are we all? Sam,
Hey, Rory.
Quincy. For once, the Irish people are on time. Wow. There must be drinkings off. Good for you, Sam. Sam, I suspect you've half a day's work left in you. Good man.
It's 5 o'clock here.
It's 5 o'clock here. And it's 8
It's
o'clock.
5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock everywhere.
There you go.
Wow. I mean, people are early. This is incredible.
I know, yeah.
It's it's a drinking kind of event, right?
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Get early usually.
I really want to know, is Kaveh at home or is that work? I mean, is that are you allowed to have a room like that at home?
Yeah, this is affectionately called my bourbon bunker. It's the only place that I could hide away where, with my wife's permission, of course, it's the only place that I can drink and smoke together. So.
Nice work.
That's brilliant.
Of course, it's in the basement, so it's not really fancy exterior, but interior will do.
It's super nice.
It looks super.
Yeah, that's it.
Quincy, do you run a brewery, right?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, here in Wicklow, just south of Dublin.
Very cool.
Awesome.
So do you have a beer version of Kaveh's Room?
Sorry, said it again? No.
You have a beer version of Kaveh's Room?
No, I don't have a good understanding of why it was Kaveh's, I'm afraid.
We were actually supposed to come out to Ireland this year. Unfortunately, with COVID, everything got screwed up. But we were going to visit Jameson and chat with our partners and friends in Dublin and Cork.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's a pity. Maybe next year.
Hopefully.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
Mauro, what's new in your part of the world?
Well, nothing really new. I am in Miami right now. I'm not in New York anymore. I'm hunkered down here. Everything is by Zoom. Some opening restaurants and stuff, but we've been kind of quiet somehow. Trying to kind of wait a little bit, make up our minds about stuff. Other than that, I mean, we're kind of having kind of fun. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, it's all good, all positive. My kids are here. We are cooking. We are drinking, working, going to the beach because they opened the beach 10 days ago. Exercising. I mean, it's been fun. It's okay.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
The video? You do the video now.
Right there.
Check on video. Check on video.
Brooke, how are you?
Hi, Jackson. This is Edge from Dublin.
Oh, hey.
How you doing?
I'm good.
How are things in Louisville?
I'm sorry.
This is a great group.
Fun group. We've got a lot of people logging on right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Hey, Edge, it's Brooke. How are you?
Hi, Brooke. I thought it was you, man. How are you?
I'm good. How's my man Darren doing?
He's doing brilliant.
Nice.
That's great. I didn't want to launch in, but yeah, I recognize you. That's great. So you're part of the Endeavor crew here?
Fortunately, yes. Yep. We had a brief conversation about it.
Yeah.
But it's been a great experience, as you recognize when we were talking about it.
That's right. Yeah, and we're new. I mean, our office has been open now since the spring, but already it's taken off at a gallop. It's like really we're doing so well and generating so much interest in Ireland and expanding the network and just really enjoying all the opportunities to connect with everybody. It's been nothing but a positive experience for everybody. So we're really excited.
Fantastic.
And this is like a food and beverage orientated group.
That what it looks like.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to step out and get a bourbon. Keep talking, guys.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't miss the chance.
Don't miss the chance. Yeah, we have that in common as well with Kentucky. You know, the Irish whiskey business is well established. You know, it's very historic. And although Scotch whiskey has probably got a bigger profile internationally,
Yep.
Irish whiskey seems to be getting bigger and bigger. And
We're catching up.
yeah, we would say of Scotch whiskey that it is one of the nicer of the soft drinks.
Well, just Irish whiskey in the U.S. just hit 5 million cases. Actually, was announced today.
Wow.
So it's a huge milestone for Irish whiskey.
Yeah, well, I know it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's getting more and more recognition, which is fantastic. And there's such a regard for the craft of whiskey making in Ireland, and which goes back centuries. And so I think that's going to continue. I think that translates, you know, that kind of craft and regard for the whole tradition is something that we have in abundance in Ireland. So. And also in you know, obviously historically, I don't need to tell you all about Kerry Gold and some of the other great products that have come out of the country. We have a long tradition of great food and beverage innovations, but there's probably room for more. Somebody pointed out to me not long ago, there's no Irish ice cream, which is like kind of ridiculous. We got to get on that one. That's my next project.
Irish coffee, there is Irish coffee. So I mean, why not Irish ice cream?
You're right, Irish coffee. Yeah.
Right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So we still have a ton of people logging on, which is great,
Right.
and imagine
Okay.
folks will continue to do so. But in the spirit, pun intended, of time and everyone's busy schedule, but we still want to have some fun. We want to connect, and we've got a great kind of story. Or Kaveh's got a great story to tell. Kaveh Zamanian, founder of Rabbit Hole Distilling. He's an outlier Endeavor entrepreneur, meaning one of the very highest top performing entrepreneurs and companies globally. And in true Endeavor fashion, this idea started out small, is an opportunity to just bring everyone together in a impactful but also fun and enjoyable way. And with a bourbon entrepreneur, we thought, well, we should tell Kaveh's story. It's pretty incredible, and he can lead us in a cheers. And again, in true Endeavor fashion, a small idea became something still intimate but much bigger. And instead of being a few folks regionally, it then started to span people from across the U.S., then across the pond in Ireland, then folks from Brazil and Colombia and Puerto Rico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a true great global collective of wonderful members of Endeavor. And I know Edge, I know you have a time constraint. So to kick things off, we'd love to hear from you what, entrepreneurship and high impact entrepreneurship means to you. And then also pass the baton with a cheers to Kaveh. We'll all raise our glasses, and then we'll hear from the man of the hour, Kaveh, followed by Mauro Schnaidman, who's a rock star CEO, entrepreneur, mentor, CEO of Sara Lee in the past, CEO of Jafra Cosmetics, Tupperware board member, big Louisville and Rabbit Hole fan, and a wonderful individual. And then Lisanne Dorion from Endeavor Puerto Rico. She serves on the board there. We also have board members, Brooke Smith from the Louisville office, the chair here joining. Lisanne also serves on the board of Bacardi. So again, it's a food and beverage and spirits heavy community, but it's a broader community. And so all these entrepreneur stories, no matter what vertical, are impactful and important. So I'll pass the baton to Edge and we'll get going. So thanks for being here, everybody.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Jackson, for including the Dublin office in this event. We are spiritually, culturally, and officially part of the US region as far as Endeavour is concerned. Although Ireland geographically might be a little bit too far to the east, we think of ourselves very much in the same spirit as the US. We've always had this really strong connection. And I think a lot of Irish entrepreneurs tend to look in the direction of the United States. So it does make sense. On this event, we have a couple of the young entrepreneurs that we're hoping will end up going through the local LSP and on to become official Endeavour entrepreneurs from a company called Strong Roots. We've got Sam Denigan, and we have our CEO, Rory, who's on the call as well. And it's part of the business world that I think Ireland has a lot to offer. The food, beverages, and hospitality, all the things that go together. It's sort of in our blood. And I was just saying, there's some very big traditional success stories, but we are determined not to miss out on that sector with our Dublin office. Although obviously technology companies take up a very large proportion of what we're looking into, the food and beverage space is a very active space, very interesting for us, and we can see a lot of companies coming through in the pipeline that are going to hopefully make it through to become Endeavour entrepreneurs. So just, it's an exciting time. It's a challenging time, but I think Endeavour is really well placed to make a huge impact for business across all sectors. And since our office opened, there's been nothing but positive responses. People are really getting to know what Endeavour is about, and on every level, at the board level, but also entrepreneur level, and the kind of junior entrepreneur level, there seems to be a lot of excitement building. So, I can't wait to hear about what's going on around the world in this meeting. I would like to raise a toast to everyone here. I'm drinking a local Wicklow Wolf is a local craft beer. We hope at one point they might end up being an entrepreneur. So cheers to everybody. Thanks for the invitation, and we look forward to more of these in the future.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.
Love it.
Cheers.
All right. So
Put a rough one now.
So Kaveh, first and foremost, thank you for doing this. And then second, the most important question, what are you drinking?
Well, thanks for inviting me. This is always just surreal. And the story of Rabbit Hole, and to be sitting here just a couple of years after joining Endeavour is a pretty incredible experience. I still have to pinch myself. But I am drinking our Kentucky Straight Bourbon. This is High Gold, which is our high rye bourbon. One of our recent kind of releases. So cheers.
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 Everyone's going to be in a really loose and good mood after this Zoom call. So Kaveh, let's start with your journey. So how did an Iranian immigrant turned Southern Californian, turned MD, PhD, clinical psychologist, become the future and one of the fastest growing spirits brands in the world based in Louisville, Kentucky? that is not, I think, the arc that people expect, which is fantastic and amazing. So how did it happen? How did you become the future of bourbon?
I don't know, brother. I mean, shit, a lot of luck, that's for sure. No, I mean, listen, like anything else, I think everybody here on this call probably relates to it. We all have a dream, right? It starts with a vision. And for me, hospitality and the wine and spirit business has always been really close and dear to my heart. And when I was in school, I basically put myself through school working in restaurants and bars, and fell in love with wine and spirits. That was really the seed, and left an impression on me. And when I moved to Kentucky, now several years ago, over a decade ago, I just couldn't believe that there's not a whole lot of Americans know about bourbon. I mean, this is kind of a strange thing to me, because the Irish, the Scotch, they are very kind of prideful of their native spirits. And I thought it was kind of weird that Americans don't even know about bourbon. So it seems like an odd mix to have a guy from Iran be kind of the Johnny Appleseed of bourbon. But that was really part of what appealed to me, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so when you came out of the gate, and when you were going through the endeavor process, actually, a number of folks whom you met with commented to us, and we shared it with Kaveh, he's either a genius or completely out of his mind, because you went in big out of the gate. I mean, out of the gate, you built the 16th largest spirits bourbon distilling facility in the world. From day one, that was the plan, where usually folks, work their way up to that. And obviously have gone on to great success. So, what was it like scaling, your business so quickly? It's such a large volume in the face of an industry that never does it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I growing up in Southern California, I'm going to use a surfing analogy. You kind of see the swell rising and the wave basically coming. And I think part of what prompted me to move very fast was essentially seeing that the window of opportunity in some ways is closing, because there is a beginning boom for American whiskey. And I saw and noticed that a lot of players are getting in the game pretty quickly. And in order to be impactful, which goes back to the original vision, for me, the vision was we want Rabbit Hole to be the next big American whiskey brand, period. So how do we achieve that objective when you got a lot of people basically just right on your tails, if not ahead of you? So, it made sense that we either have to go big or really just be comfortable with a very slow growth. And I honestly, big part of it had to do with my age. Given where I am as a kind of a second, if you would, chapter in my life from a career standpoint, it made sense that if I want to see this thing materialize in my lifetime, I got to go big. So it was a big gamble. Put everything on the line, as you know, on the personal side. From a financial piece, it was family and friends. And then I hit the road, and I raised $18 million to make this thing happen.
Yeah. And for further context, Kaveh was a successful, was managing a successful business, clinical psychology business in Chicago. So he had a great business already, he had a great career. And one of his primary practice areas, which I joke with him about, was helping treat and consult family-run businesses. And so Kaveh literally became the patient. He kicked the patient out of the couch, and he laid down and said, "I think I'm going to do what you do," which is pretty incredible. So you pull off this audacious goal, and you and I both know it wasn't all easy sailing. There were plenty of ups and downs. What was maybe the biggest challenge for you? Because certainly some big things happened after some of those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the first challenge was being able to raise the money. I think we got things rolling pretty quickly. For me, the first major success was being able to get a contract that allows me to lay down our own liquid. Because for those of you who might not be familiar with American whiskey, historically, there's a lot of horse trading. Not that dissimilar to Scotch and maybe even Irish whiskey, where distilleries swap barrels and all that. And I don't want anything to do with that, because I wanted to make sure that what we're releasing is one of a kind and truly unique expressions for Rabbit Hole. So that was the first challenge, to find a distillery that would make my recipes for me. And once we got that going, the next piece, which was even more daunting, was raising the money. I did not want any venture money, and I was trying to avoid that as much as possible. So I just scoured the state. It was really me with a handful of, PowerPoint presentations and boards, and just going to whoever I can talk to. And we had a total of, I think at the end, probably about 135 small investors that together collectively allowed us to get to that 18 million mark. That was pretty daunting, because as you can imagine, especially going to Eastern Kentucky and saying, hey, my name is Kaveh. I'm, an immigrant from Iran. I'd like to get money from you to start a distillery in Louisville, Kentucky. I got a few eye rolls there, but all in all, it was a pretty amazing experience. And one of the things I actually was just talking about it today was how gracious and welcoming this state has been. This is one of the things that I think is really important about Kentucky, because in general, it gets a pretty bad rap nationwide. And I think that from my experience, and this is what I was saying to another person this morning on a podcast, where I feel very welcome. I think that without the support of the folks here, there's no way Rabbit Hole would have happened. So that was really the biggest challenge, to raise that money.
Yeah. So all of this hard work, grit, determination led to a partnership with Pernod, the second largest spirits business in the world, I believe.
Yeah.
Which and you maintained your position. So your partners, your early that early group of investors that believed you when it was truly just a dream, they had a great experience. How did that partnership come about, and what did that mean to you to allow you to scale the business, not just nationally but globally?
Yeah. I think that we knew very early that we're going to at some point be poised to have these kinds of conversations. For us, it was lucky, as you've seen the distillery. The distillery was just named the architectural icon of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And I said very early on, the big chunk of that money that we raised was to make sure that the distillery itself becomes an embodiment of our philosophy of transparency, innovation, and essentially becomes really the showpiece of the place. And it's interesting, because we had a lot of the big players come to the table very early on and talk to us. None of them really connected with us from a cultural standpoint, from a standpoint of alignment with vision and culture. And I can tell you pretty much all the big players at some point, once they saw the distillery, they started courting us. It just happens that with Pernod, Alex Ricard happened to be in Louisville, and he was shopping around for a bourbon brand, because they let go of Wild Turkey in 2008. Probably was one of the most top foolish things that they did. And they were back in the business of trying to find another bourbon brand. And he happened to be driving down the road from the distillery, saw the distillery, called his M&A guys and said, "What the hell is going on here? And let's get the conversation rolling." And from the first conversation I had with him, I was really just felt very warm and fuzzy from the standpoint of his approach, his perspective. I thought that the family value, family culture is there. And that was the beginning of thinking that this could be a partnership that allows us to be successful. There were two key things for me that I was really interested in making sure, one, our investors were able to get a really nice, healthy return on their investment, which they did. And the second piece was making sure that I not only maintain my ownership, but I have basically complete 100% ownership in terms of running the business. So there was no, other than advisement and maybe some financial oversight, I run the ship, which has been an incredible, I think, partnership that we were able to forge, because it's really with the distribution network that they have that's going to allow us to both make a U.S. splash as well as an international splash. I mean, that's the name in our industry. Without that distribution network, is really a major challenge to be able to get a brand off the ground.
Sure. So you've had great success, which is well earned, but you've never lost sight of giving back and paying it forward, completely in line with Endeavor. And so beyond supporting, Endeavor and high impact entrepreneurship and the power of entrepreneurship, you launched a campaign called To Dream Inside, which not only helped support food and beverage industry workers that were being and are being displaced by the current COVID environment, but a host of other organizations throughout the community that are very much in the creative space. So would love for you to talk about, To Dream Inside and why you're doing what you're doing, and then frankly share the impact that this campaign, which is in its early days, is already made, because it's a pretty astounding impact that you all have already made. So would love for you to share about To Dream Inside and that campaign to help those that are not doing well during this period of time.
Sure. Well, one of the first things that came to mind when the COVID hit, we actually had to close our visitor center, which last year we had 40,000 people go through that experience through our distillery. So that was a huge hit for us. And the team that we put together, anybody who's been in hospitality knows to find the right team and be able to manage those folks. That's a lot of work, right? Hospitality is, in general, the least amount of revenue, the most amount of work and challenges. So I wanted to make sure that we don't let go of those folks. That was our first commitment, to make sure that we're able to shuffle money around to preserve those positions and keep those people on the payroll. And then once we looked at that, this is probably the biggest seismic shift in our industry ever, because all of a sudden what you have is essentially you got two revenue channels. You got the on-premise, which is essentially restaurants and bars. You got the off-premise, which is liquor stores, and essentially on-premise just shut down overnight, right? So that revenue stream is completely dried up. And we, as a result of that, we're thinking, okay, so there's money that we had allocated to marketing and supporting that channel. What could we do to actually help the folks that day in, day out represent us? And I wanted to go narrow, because one of my concerns has always been that when it comes to situations like this, and we all probably know about this, folks donate very generous, but a lot of times those dollars don't really go to the people that really need it, or a lot of the dollars end up getting lost in administrative expenses or those types of things. So after some search and discussions with different groups, we decided the Tales of the Cocktail, that historically has been a really huge supporter of bartending community, particularly on the education side of it, would be a group that makes the most sense for us. So we initiated this #2 Dream Inside campaign, loosely based on my own kind of experience, both as a psychologist and as an entrepreneur, where, it's really, the thinking was, how can we help people step back during this time of crisis and actually reflect, as opposed to get all worked up, to use this time as a time of reflection to find what's important to them And hopefully this campaign will facilitate that, and also be able to generate dollars to be able to contribute to Tales of the Cocktail, supporting the bartending community. In the end of it, we ended up giving $200,000 to Tales of the Cocktail as part of this initiative.
Wow.
And that's been very exciting. And it's also been amazing to see people join in on social media. Basically, our ask of them was, hey, why don't you just post your dream, whatever that might be, small or large, on social media, and for every post, we'll give $2 to Tales of the Cocktail. So we were able to reach $200,000 in no time, and it's just been an amazing campaign.
That's phenomenal. You know, in the midst of this situation, as you said, certainly near-term revenue pressure for Rabbit Hole in your business. And in the midst of that revenue pressure, you donate $200,000 to help people. It's an incredible, you know, testament to what you're building long term. What's your vision for the future? And in true Endeavor fashion, the bigger the better, man.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, one thing is that we have squarely decided after, I mean, this has been part of our DNA from the very beginning, but we have, in these few months, have also done our own soul searching and decided that we are positioned to squarely partner up with creatives around the world, from starting with our own community and beyond. So, you know, especially now, given what's going on with all these issues related to civil rights and things of that nature, as you know, with the Breonna Taylor situation down the street from our distillery in our hometown, you know, we very early, various artists, and you know, and the guys that have been at the distillery know the artwork that we have displayed at our distillery. This is part of essentially supporting creative folks that have something of meaning to say, basically on issues that are meaningful to them. Because I personally have always believed that artists typically are at least 20, 30 years ahead of time. They're able to tell the truth. The true artists are able to tell the truth that we ordinary folks don't generally have the wherewithal to really recognize until it kind of hits us in the head, if you would. So, you know, we've basically decided to make sure that we follow that path and really put our money where our mouth is. And we have several initiatives that are going on in terms of supporting creative artists around our local community, nationally, and hopefully one day beyond, which is kind of a part of the broader, I think, thing that's happening with Rabbit Hole. So we just opened up all 50 states. So we're available now nationally, which is huge. And we are just about to open up UK in September. And our goal is to essentially open up several markets in the European Union and build on that. So the next step for us beyond the US is starting with UK and likely France, Germany, and Spain, and possibly Italy. And then beyond that, looking at, we're in conversations with Japan, South Korea, and possibly China as well. Really what's inhibiting us right now is just having enough whiskey, because the demand is there. So only if I can get this stuff to age faster.
What do you mean? So, you know, you built the 16th largest bourbon distiller in the world out of the gate, and you've already run out of room? Why didn't you think bigger, Kaveh?
No.
Send some barrels to my house here.
There you go.
Oh, well, that is an incredible story, and it is truly inspiring. So, you know, here's to you, Kaveh. Here's to all the entrepreneurs and dreamers. And everyone, please check out To Dream Inside. Cheers.
Cheers.
So now we want to loop in Mauro and Lisanne, and then open it up for everyone to just have fun and have some conversation before we come up on time. Mauro and Lisanne, I'll let you all decide who wants to go first.
Well, you know, I can go first if you.
Mauro jumped in.
Oh, all right.
Well, who is on the who's on the other side? Who's the other person? Sorry, Jackson.
Lisanne, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Lisanne Dorion here. I sit on the Endeavor Puerto Rico board, although I'm located in the United States, in Florida. An absolute delight to be with you guys today, too. It's like the perfect capstone to my day because we had our annual general shareholders meeting for Bacardi, the good part of the day, and then I get to hear another inspiring story from Kaveh, so thank you. And yeah, I guess so I also sit on the board of Bacardi, so I have to tell you, this is just the F&B is the best place to be in Endeavor.
I think she should go first.
Well, okay, well, my pleasure. So like I said, this was like, so I'm gonna do my toast and give you a little backstory first. Today was a great day, and it's a delight to be able to be here to finish everything off. You know, and when Endeavor, when you guys reached out to me to do this, it was sort of last minute, and I thought, wow, you know, can I fit it in? And then I read a bit more about Rabbit Hole, and obviously we know a little bit, but I dug a bit deeper, and I said, I absolutely have to make this happen. And I'll tell you why it's really important to me, and listening to Kaveh and his journey, and probably all of our journeys here. What I did between the meetings today and just now is I went to a storage unit, and I went and found, this is the closest recipe we have to the original rum that was made 158 years ago. And you might ask, who cares about that? Well, I'll tell you, because just as Kaveh said that he wanted to create, you know, what whiskey could be, and how all of us want to create something different and make change. That's why we're entrepreneurs. Well, about 158 years ago, there was this little guy hanging out in Santiago, Cuba, and he wanted to get rid of that dark rum. He hated it. It was grog, and most important of all, his wife didn't like it. And so he came up with a way to make white rum, and that's what he did. And we all know it now as Bacardi, and it's sort of out there and it's ubiquitous, and we don't pay a lot of attention to it. But I would say he was one of the first F&B entrepreneurs. And if Endeavor had been around, I think he would have perhaps, you know, really made us all proud. Anyway, so that's why I went to go get that today, because 158 years later, as I sat in meetings today, and people think, oh, it's a big conglomerate. And I think, Kaveh, you know, you really struck a chord when you talked about, you know, working with Pernod, because there are essential values that we all hold dear. And Pernod is a fabulous company, fabulous family as well. But one thing that struck me today was that how in these times of challenging COVID, of Black Lives Matter, of just the discord in our world, we as entrepreneurs possess incredibly valuable skills. We're fearless. We know what it's like to be a founder, to stick with something and see it through. And I've always found no matter where we are, we find our family. It might be our birth family. It might be those people that work with us to build or to scale up. It might be our mentors. But I think that those three things are really what is going to make Kaveh continue along the road of success for each person on this call and each person in the greater Endeavor community. It just so happens that in the F&B we have more fun doing it, I think. So my toast is 158 years old. It's to everyone on this call, it's to Kaveh, and it's to all of us getting through these times by being fearless, by hanging out with our family, and by keeping it all together. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well done.
Mauro, no pressure. You got to close
Yeah.
this out.
Yeah, well, it's a big responsibility. But well, first of all, Kaveh, I didn't have the chance to meet you. I mean, it's great what you have done. I mean, I had heard about you and your story, and what an incredible brand and business that you built. So I'm really impressed and humbled by hearing your story. So big congratulations to you. Jackson, thank you so much for inviting me. You know, I mean, I've been with Endeavor for, I think, more than 10 years already in different countries. And, you know, Endeavor Louisville is one of my favorites. Some people that know me very well, they would say, and they will argue, yeah, Mauro, it's one of your favorites because you love bourbon. and that's, and that's kind of true, a little bit true, but actually, you guys are doing a great job, and you have brought so many great entrepreneurs to the ecosystem. So you really do a good job. I'm a big fan of you. I would like to propose a toast to the entrepreneurs that are there. They're fighting every day, even more right now. I mean, they have always fought, every day, and they are fighting even more right now because of all the let's say, all the context. But they are the ones that are gonna build a better world, are building and are gonna build a better world for us. I mean, some entrepreneurs are asking me, Mauro, what do you think are the things that are important right now to build a successful company in the future, right? And well, first, please survive, right? So manage to survive, but then look into the future, which is something very important. I usually say, I have been saying basically 3 or 4 things. One is, make sure that you build a purpose-driven company, so you make sure that you have a reason to wake up, and your people have a reason to wake up. It's not only about the money, it's about the difference that you can make. Continue to innovate, because I mean, I'm a big fan of innovation, and I think it's going to continue to be so important. So make sure you have the conditions in your company to continue to innovate. Adaptability, which is something that is going to be so key, to adapt, to be flexible, to be fast, especially to compete with the giants and the established companies. And diversity. Diversity, you have to first believe in diversity. It's not a matter of ticking the box. Oh, I have women and men. Oh, I have Afro-American. Oh, I have Hispanic. I have this and that. No, you have to believe that this can be really key. And you guys are scaling up. So it's so difficult to change the situation in terms of diversity, that it's kind of the case that we kind of have to do top down, like top down, to really put more women, if I will, fight for same salaries, all that kind of stuff that you guys know and you are aware. Now that you are the future, and you're the present as well, but you're the future, and you're building your companies, make sure that you build it right. So a toast to the companies that have a huge success and a huge potential, and will build a better world for all of us and make a difference.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, this is a lot of fun. Let's continue the fun and kind of get a little loose, open things up. I'm going to put Brooke Smith on the spot. I just cold called you, man. I just cold called you. But you got a big food and beverage presence. So why don't we start with you from the gallery, and then we want to hear from the entrepreneurs. Rory, I don't know. Maybe one of your entrepreneurs wants to jump in after Brooke. So I'll ask you to call on them. But Brooke, why don't you get things going, and then we'll just go around the room, the Zoom room.
Well, I mean, come on. If bourbon's involved, that checks a lot of boxes, right? It is an interesting space. Food and beverage. It's a volatile space. I think that the entrepreneurs that participate in it are, kind of exponential risk takers. The highs are higher, probably the lows may be lower. If you just look at the restaurant business and the casualties that mount up. Locally, we could talk about Texas Roadhouse and the challenges that organization went through time and time again until it got there. So I think the perseverance is super important. I'm enamored with it, mainly because I traveled nonstop for a couple decades. So I saw a lot of different things. I was introduced to everything that related to kind of hospitality, food and beverage. And it's fascinating because, when we're not working, and even when we're in that space. Being from Kentucky, and it was great to hear what Kaveh had to say about the environment here, even beyond bourbon. I think it's an enriching environment. It's an environment where people want to support others, and arts also is very interesting. And some of the things that I work on in Eastern Kentucky, which is important to me. But at the end of the day, we all sit down and we have conversation, we have a beverage in front of us or food, and we're in an environment. So I think this is the most potent kind of hard knock and a grouping of entrepreneurs. And it's nice to see how resourceful we can be. Also, again, to reference locally, like the hot chicken takeover and the challenges of being in expansion mode and a raise, and then to have the COVID situation kind of fall on your shoulders. You find out what you're made of. I see Dave Duran there, who is a serial entrepreneur, who is coming up with a lot of ways to kind of elevate, things in the industry with data and technology. That's obviously something important to consider. But again, it's an honor to be on the call with you guys. It's great. Endeavor is an X factor. I think everybody realizes that. It's not a cult. It's not like we drink the Endeavor Kool-Aid, but at the same time, it's hard to argue against. And so I feel that it's been one of the more exciting things that I've had a chance to get involved in. And if you told me that you were going to take Endeavor away, I'd probably crack a tear. At any rate, enough about that. I'd love to hear from the entrepreneurs that are on the call, because that's what it's all about. So please pass the baton on to those that are here that the Edge referenced.
All right, Rory, the floor is yours.
Great, yeah. Well, I mean, this was more fun in the first 2 minutes than any SaaS conference call that we can do with Endeavor. So yeah, I had heard the fun element of the F&B portfolio was said to me long ago, and I'm seeing it now. So Barry Napier's on the call, and he is our one Endeavor entrepreneur from Ireland who's in the software game, but I can insult him because he previously has owned bars. So he obviously has a taste for the old F&B. So Barry won't mind me slagging off that sector. I previously had invested in a gin business as it happened. And during my due diligence of that, I spoke to someone who's probably one of the best known sort of food and beverage guys in Ireland. And the ability for people who are in the sector to spot trends is phenomenal. And he said to me about 7 years ago, brown spirits is the way forward. And then when I met him again a few years later, he said, watch the seltzer space and hard seltzer. So I guess, what Kaveh do you see as I know bourbon's here to stay and you've bet a lot on it, but what do you see as the next trends coming through the drink space? And then turning to our own Irish people who are on this, if I may, I know Quincy and Simon and Wicklow Wolf, they had to pivot pretty hard in terms of 50% of their revenues were sold to pubs. Pubs closed in Ireland 10 weeks ago. And they, when you get sent lemons, you make lemonade, and they did a great job of turning on the can and home off-license product line. So I wouldn't mind hearing from Quincy, perhaps, what he thinks and what he wants to ask. But firstly, if I can just ask Kaveh, in terms of beyond bourbon, or what trends do you see coming down the channels?
Yeah, I think, for us here in the U.S., gin has been essentially kind of a rising star, if you would. I think COVID slowed it down a little bit. Interestingly enough, one of the impacts of COVID, I think, has been on small batch cocktails or ready to drink. The RTD category is beginning to really tick up, and that's one of the areas that I know there's a lot of conversation around it. We actually have been working on a small batch cocktail kind of offering for probably about a year and a half with the bar group Death & Co out of New York, and we're looking to finally release that sometime in January next year. But I think small batch cocktail is one category that I've watched and kind of been following closely. The other category that's been interesting to me has been actually the non-alcoholic distilled drinks. That's another category that I think is emerging. And actually, Jackson, I was going to call you about a group here. There's 3 women here in Louisville, actually, Spiritless. That I've been talking to Lauren and her team, and that's another category that I think right now there is no. There is just 1 or 2 players that have the lion's share of what's going on, but I think it's going to be an interesting category to watch, or a subsection within our industry. The beautiful thing about that, just to kind of point out for those of you might not be familiar with it, is that it essentially it is a distilled liquid, but they try to get it to be as close as to gin or bourbon without the alcohol. So there's an interesting process that I'm actually learning more and more about. And I think it's there is essentially a niche group that will be interested in that. Now, where is it going to sit on the shelf, particularly in off-premise? That's to be determined. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for them. Where are they going to house this in terms of representation? But some bars, I know we're very good friends with the guys from Death & Co., for example, that have their both New York and Denver bars, and they serve. I'm blanking on the name of the brand. They serve one of the brands out there that's been pretty successful.
Quincy, Simon.
How you doing, fellas? Quincy here from Wicklow Wolf, here just outside Dublin. We've had what would I call it, rather stormy weathers here over the past few months, just like you guys have all over the world. We had just opened a brand new brewery with a state-of-the-art brew house and facilities, just at the back end of last year. So obviously, the whole COVID crisis came at a rather bad time for us in particular, because we were just getting ready to ramp up, both domestically and from an export point of view, and had been doing really well. But as Rory said, half of our business was in the on-trade, in keg business, and that pretty much shut overnight. But thankfully, we could have been inclined to go more into the on-trade keg business, but thankfully we didn't, and we had hedged our bets with a lot of volume sales in bottles and in cans. So basically, and thankfully, we've replaced all of our keg business with small pack business, and we're working around the clock, filling beer, canning beer, at all times now, just to keep up with demand. So it's been a little bit of a silver lining for us at this point in time. The upside for us that I see is that in the on-trade here, Guinness and Heineken, as we call Heineken, the big green giant, they dominate the on-trade, and it is very difficult to make a space for yourself. But it's much more difficult for them to dominate the off-trade. So we're recruiting a lot of new drinkers, a lot of new consumers on the on-trade. So that's been pretty good for us, thankfully. And like as Edge said there, there's a lot of great brands in every category. You have your Kerrygold and even Guinness and etc. And part of the whole thing about Irish brands I see is that we're as a nation, we're great storytellers. And I think if you tell your story well, the story behind your brand really well, that it does stand to you in the long run. And that's what we're trying to do at Wicklow Wolf. Did anyone hear any of that?
No, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Kaveh, what are your thoughts? Even though you're on the spirit side of things, what are you seeing on the the beer, lager, etc. side?
Yeah, no, I think what resonates with me is the storytelling side of it. One of the things that we did from very early on, and I think now it's paying dividends, and it was part of what I think has also attracted Pernod to us, has been the fact that I try to build a vertically integrated kind of operation where I observed that a lot of the larger brands do not innovate, or their marketing and branding is typically farmed out to other agencies. We brought everything in-house. So essentially the model is that the distillery serves as an incubator for new brands. So the small batch cocktail is an example of that. We can easily play around and be nimble enough to create some interesting things. And with the number of people that are coming through the distillery, we can play around and test market that. And if it's successful, grow it from there. I think the other piece has been on the marketing and branding side of it. So our social game, our digital game is pretty outstanding. I'm really proud of that team. And I think part of that was based on the decision to make sure that we bring everything in-house, everybody, the team's in-house, because I started early on trying to tell the story through these agencies, and I became more and more frustrated, both with the cost and then the lack of really, I think, understanding of it. Exactly. Yeah. So now with the Hit Town, with the team in-house, we're able to not only create content very quickly, but it's much, much more on message.
Yeah, I also think too that, you know, when you're dealing with outside agencies, they do have different agendas and different ideas and sometimes you kind of get into a bit of conflict with them as to what your actual idea is and how you know better than they do every time, you know, really, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right, 100%.
So we're coming up on the hour, and in the spirit of keeping the entrepreneurs at the center of everything that we do at Endeavor, at the end of the day, that's what matters to Endeavor, is supporting high growth, high impact entrepreneurs. I think we should raise a toast to Kaveh Zamanian in Rabbit Hole, one of the highest performing Endeavor entrepreneurs, you know, around the globe, but also just a genuinely wonderful person and entrepreneur, as I'm sure you can tell from this. And also raise a toast to Barry, the first Endeavor entrepreneur from Ireland. And then finally, raise a toast to Quincy, Simon, Dave Durand, and future Endeavor entrepreneurs, because the journey goes on. So here's to you all. Here to the Endeavor entrepreneurs, the new Endeavor entrepreneurs, and the future Endeavor entrepreneurs.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Well done, Kaveh.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Scale up, go big, give back, Endeavor.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jackson. Thanks, Jake. Well done, guys. Thanks, Kaveh.
Thanks, Kaveh.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.